So I have the most popular wireless meat thermometers right here behind me. And today we're going to put them all against each other, putting them to the test. Which one has the best features, the best accuracy, the best app, best range, and reliability? Do I have a new top 3? Let's dive in. Okay, so I did want to preface this video by saying that the video is going to be a little bit longer than what you're used to. I have a ton of thermometers I have to get through. There's going to be a ton of information. But like always, there's going to be chapters included, so you can skip around to whatever part that most interests you. But I do hope that you stick around for the entire video because there's going to be a lot of good information. With that being said, let's introduce each thermometer and some of their big features.
Okay, the first one up is the Typhur Sync Gold, starting at $229. Typhur offers a 2-probe and a 4-probe model. What's really impressive is the sub-1G technology. Now, this is going to give you a lot more reliable range, and we're going to test this out a little bit later. The Typhur Gold has top-of-the-line specs, offering 5 internal sensors with 1 ambient sensor and an accuracy of 0.5 degrees Fahrenheit. The ambient sensor is capable of reaching 932 degrees Fahrenheit max, giving you plenty of searing power. Up next is a Chef IQ, starting at $129 for this particular model. Now, the Chef IQ has some really great features for the price point. The accuracy is a bit unknown, but you are getting 4 internal sensors with that ambient sensor. It's a bit unique because its smart base actually talks to you verbally. And it also offers 1,000 degrees searing power. Up next is the Thermoworks RFX wireless. This particular package is $275, and I think it's an absolute must because you're going to get the Wi-Fi capabilities with that gateway. Now, the RFX offers a lot of great specs. You're getting 4 internal sensors, but again, you're not getting a built-in ambient sensor. I'm going to do a quick accuracy test with ambient sensors a bit later. The probe itself can still withstand up to 1,000 degrees of searing power. Up next, we have the TempSpike Pro. The TempSpike Pro is another unique probe that's offering something kind of special. We'll talk about it in just a bit. But it is a standalone base probe offering you a lot of great specs, but it only has 3 internal sensors with 1 ambient sensor. So what makes the TempSpike Pro so unique and kind of stand out from the other probes? It's completely modular. You can remove the display and take it with you anywhere as long as the range allows, but you can also add on more probes and expand. The TempSpike Pro also has the highest spec ambient sensor at 1,050 degrees Fahrenheit. Next, we have Combustion Inc., and this package with the Wi-Fi booster comes in at $180, but Combustion Inc. also offers a hermetic seal. Now, this is an airtight waterproof barrier at the ambient sensor, which is really, really cool. If you're looking to make it an all-in-one package and compete with Typhur Sync, for example, there are additional things you need to purchase. The Wi-Fi display is an additional $100, and if you're looking to do a 2-probe model with the display, you're looking at $532. Combustion Inc. is another probe that has top-of-the-line features with a lot of great specs. It's also the only wireless thermometer that's offering 8 total sensors. And you do have 900 degrees Fahrenheit of searing power with that ambient sensor. Last but not least, the company that started it all, Meter. Now, the Meter Pro series ranges from $129 to $350. Meter was the benchmark when it came to specs. They do offer 6 total sensors with a stainless steel ceramic sensor. Meter also set the bar with the ambient sensor, allowing you to sear without having to remove your probe, with a maximum ambient sensor of 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. But honestly, all of the probes today have very impressive ambient sensors, allowing you to sear without ever having to remove the thermometer.
Okay, so now I want to move on to transmission, range, and reliability. We're going to be testing these 3 functions for every single thermometer back here. It's probably going to be the segment that most of you are going to be interested in because, let's face it, when we lose connection, it really does frustrate us. So here's where things are going to get really interesting. This is the absolute worst case scenario test. Actually, it's like an extreme worst case scenario test. Basically, I'm going to take some potatoes, I'm going to stick the thermometers in the potatoes, and then I'm going to wrap the potatoes in aluminum foil. I'm going to place the potatoes one by one inside my enameled cast iron Dutch oven, which is filled with water. And then the entire thing is going to go inside of the smoker. Now, the remaining thermometers, and they're going to be surrounding the Dutch oven. So we're still going to have that radio interference from the other thermometers. This is taking things a little bit more extreme. Why am I doing this? Because of the marketing claims that some of these thermometers have. Okay, so I want to start off by saying that Typhur Sync is the first one to get dunked into the Dutch oven. and it has been fantastic. I haven't lost connection at all. Rock steady connection. So let's test out that sub 1G. I'm gonna start moving away from the thermometer, from the grill, with the base of my hand, and let's see how far we can go before we actually lose connection. We just lost connection with Typhur Sync. So you can get pretty far with Typhur Sync and it's still going to hold a pretty steady connection. I mean, this is pretty ridiculous that I'm this far away and it just lost connection. And remember, it's inside the Dutch ovens. This is the extreme case. Let's check out the other thermometers.
Okay, so while the Typhur Gold was getting dunked into the cast iron enameled Dutch oven for the extreme test, I was assembling the other thermometers, making sure to wrap them in foil, but to give enough room so they could still have a fighting chance for the transmission. We don't want to interfere with the antennas after all. Outside of the Dutch oven, every single thermometer worked just fine. There was no disconnects. Unfortunately, meter kept losing connection and we couldn't get past the enameled cast iron lid. So meter couldn't complete the test with both lids down, but once we opened up the cast iron lid, it took a while, but eventually meter did regain connection. Up next was the Thermoworks RFX, and I had high hopes for this one because of, well, the marketing claims. I immediately took it to the exact location that the Typhur Gold had lost connection, and somewhere along the way, the RFX unfortunately had a disconnect. Now what was strange was it was having a really hard time reconnecting, and it only reconnected when I got super close to the grill. I decided to figure out exactly where it lost connection, and it looks like its maximum range was right at this bench over here, which is about 17 feet or so. That's still very impressive. The Chef IQ is next, and unfortunately it didn't do so good. It did do better than the meter because it was able to still have a connection with the cast iron lid on, but the connection would die as soon as you closed the barbecue lid. I did repeat the test several times, but it looks like the barbecue lid is the range killer here. Up next was the ThermoPro Temp Spike. The Temp Spike did surprisingly very well for its price range. We were able to move it slightly further away from the grill on the stainless steel table. The connection was spotty though. It was most reliable directly next to the barbecue grill. Last but not least was Combustion Ink Gen 2, and Combustion Ink Gen 2 did very well as long as you were right next to the grill. As soon as you moved it away, unfortunately it did have disconnection issues. It was also the fastest to regain connection with about 5 seconds or so. It was clear that Typhur Gold was the winner of this round, followed by Thermoworks and then ThermoPro.
Okay, so let's talk about response time, speed, and the ability to measure delicate foods, and of course accuracy. I found all the models to be pretty responsive and accurate in normal conditions, normal circumstances, but some obviously more than others. Now, temperature responsiveness, the accuracy of the temperature, and how quickly things are being measured, hands down goes to Combustion Ink and Typhur. Now, the app always has a slight lag, but you'll notice with all the models that have display units, the display will give you the information first before the app. Now, the most impressive probe and the thinnest probe also goes to Combustion Ink. Combustion Ink was the only full-size, full-length probe that was also thin and had the lowest insertion depth, right? That little notch that tells you this is how far you have to push the probe in. That is really, really impressive. Not to mention the 8 sensors and how well they're equally spaced out. I really, really like that. I like full-length probes because you can measure different parts of the food. So speaking of the displays and the standalone features, app fatigue for me is a real thing. These days you're monitoring everything on your app. It gets a little bit much after a while. Hands down, Typhur wins this. This is the best standalone all-in-one package you're going to get. The base is absolutely the smartest base. You can do anything on here, right? You can change all of your settings, start, stop. It's truly and completely standalone, and not to mention that sub 1G that we talked about earlier. And then I would say followed by the Temp Spike Pro. The Temp Spike Pro looks pretty impressive, and I like that it's modular, but it just lacks some of the features that Typhur has, and the display is a little bit on the old side, but still a phenomenal standalone unit. And then you had units like the Meter Block, for example. I mean, this is just so sad when you compare it to Typhur, the Typhur Gold, which has a beautiful display. And it doesn't work very well. You really can't do anything on here. Now, Combustion Ink offers a display, but it's kind of like primitive, right? You got to cycle through the buttons, and it doesn't display more than one probe at a time. Dead last, 100% is Chef IQ and the RFX. They don't have standalone features. You have to completely rely on the app, and of course there's also no display. So speaking of the app, which one had the best app? Some apps were completely non-existent, like the RFX. The RFX does have an app, and you can monitor things through the app, but it's very, very bare bones, a little too scientific. I mean, there's not much you can do on there. It doesn't really give you reminders or alerts. It's kind of weird to set up. I was okay with it. I mean, it definitely reminds me of like an engineering thermocouple probe. I mean, that's like bare bones. That's what it reminds me of. But the app has a long way to go. I mean, I think people would like certain features, right? Just basic things and a GUI to show you what's going on. You can't even really look at the sensors, right? It has multiple sensors, but it just gives you the average of the sensors or the lowest, measurement and calls it a day. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen there. Others had great apps that were plagued by connection drops. Meter has a fantastic app. I think it's very intuitive, but it gets really frustrating when it's constantly dropping and you get that disconnect screen and it just drives you insane. Some actually talk to you. The Chef IQ actually has a voice that communicates with you throughout the entire process. And the first time I heard it, it kind of freaked me out.
Connection is lost for probe 1.
Other apps are really annoying and are constantly communicating with you and giving you alerts that you have to physically go in and like disable or acknowledge. That was Thermopro. Thermopro had like constant alerts being rolled out. Combustion Ink was quite unique. Previously, I thought Combustion Ink needed a lot of work, but after using the RFX, I think Combustion Ink actually strikes a really good balance of being very scientific and reminding you of a scientific instrument, a thermocouple, but also giving you some of those features that everybody wants. Typhur Sync, I think, was the best balance overall of any of the thermometers. I think Typhur really did their homework here. I think they borrowed from Meter and Thermopro and even a little bit of Combustion Ink, and they put it all together and they have an app that really works. Now, one more thing regarding the app, and I didn't really know where to put this. It was either app or accuracy, but they all give you estimated times for your cook. I thought Combustion Ink was spot on, like dead accurate. Meter was all over the place. Meter would give me times that were ridiculous. When I knew there was maybe 30 minutes left, it was giving me like 2 hours. I would say it was Combustion Ink first, and then Typhur after it got through that. The Temp Spike Pro and Chef IQ were almost identical, and then the RFX doesn't give you anything. Okay, so now let's talk about the ambient sensor accuracy. I really want to make sure I included this because the RFX doesn't have an ambient sensor. It's not actually truly wireless. In order to use the ambient sensor, they give you this wired ambient sensor, and the theory or the thought behind that is it's a lot more accurate to get an ambient sensor reading at the grades, which I do agree with, it is. But I was really curious to see like how much more accurate is it? Right? So I kind of did this thing where like I put it in the gas grill and I surrounded it by all of the other thermometers and kind of pointed their ambient sensor towards it. I mean, to be honest with you, Combustion Ink and Typhur, the Typhur Gold, were like right there alongside with the ambient sensor that comes with the RFX. Now, of course, there's scenarios where it's going to matter, but for most people, I think having an ambient sensor included as the total package is probably a bigger selling point. Okay, so here's my final thoughts, and I wanted to go through each individual model and just give you a breakdown of the pros and cons and what I think they're really good at and what they're not so good at. So let's start with the Chef IQ. So I think the Chef IQ is going to be the cheapest out of the bunch for a single probe model. I do like the audible like voice alerts that it gives you. That's pretty cool. So for a lot of people, this is going to be a great entry-level thermometer. It's definitely capable. It has very good specs. I think the biggest drawback is, although the app is great, there's a couple more things I'd like to see focused on, in particular to the data, right? I want to see the data be a little bit more fluid. Next one up is the Temp Spike Pro. This is an interesting product. The probes are, again, very tiny, very similar to the Chef IQ. I do like that it's trying to be modular, right? And you can expand on it and all that good stuff. And you can remove the display. It has a standalone display, which is great. That's always really, really good. The specs are all good. The specs are all there. It feels a little bit plasticky, but it comes in at a decent price. But the biggest downsides is the app. The app needs a ton of work. There's a lot there, and they're trying, and there's GUIs that they're trying to do and all that good stuff, but they don't really work that good. And you got to tap things, or you don't know what you're tapping, you don't know how to set it up. There's this weird like record function, which I don't understand. I feel like it should be recording the data of every cook anyways. All right, next up is the Meter products, the Meter Pro products. Meter was the first to do this, and I applaud them for that. but they've always had connection and reliability issues. And I would say that's their biggest downside, is that it just still isn't very reliable. It still disconnects, even with the block, which is very, very expensive. And there's another thing the meter has a big issue with, which is sometimes they don't charge. I mean, sometimes you put the probe in, you think it's charging, the next day you pick it up and it's completely dead. Meter has a fantastic app and great specs. If they can fix their connection issues, the recharging issues, and I feel like they kind of need to do a redesign, right? This kind of feels old now. The wood design with the small display or no display, but when you get a good unit, it's like lightning in a bottle. Just be a little cautious. You may have to call the customer service or even use their warranty. So how about the RFX? Well, the RFX was something I was really looking forward to reviewing, and I know a lot of you were also looking forward to me reviewing it. It's definitely very scientific. The specs are very impressive, but the sensor spacing is kind of odd, right? It all sits at the very tip, which I feel like was a missed opportunity. I mean, I don't know. If you want to be scientific, the spacing on Combustion Inc. is a lot more scientific. That gives you a lot more data points. Reliability was great. I mean, I think it came in second place on our range test, but I think the biggest weakness of Thermoworks' RFX is the app. I mean, dear God, add some GUIs, add some pictures, add something to walk people through, right? Okay, so now on to Combustion Inc. It definitely has the specs and technology. It's definitely very scientific, but does a much better job of displaying it and communicating with you all the data that's capturing than RFX, hands down. I know Combustion Inc. is expanding on their ecosystem. I think they're going to be adding like a blower and a giant grill gauge and things like that, which is very, very cool. But it definitely feels like it's really focusing on just single probes, right? Like if you have multiple probes, that's kind of where things crumble a bit. I've done a full video on Combustion Inc., so I'm not going to dive too deep. If you're interested, check it out. I'll put it in the description of this video. As far as the range, in the extreme condition, I think it was like second from last or third from last, something like that. But in a normal situation, it's actually pretty reliable. Nowhere near as great as Typhur, but pretty good. Okay, now what about the Typhur Gold? So I really think that the Typhur Gold is the best all-in-one package. It has true standalone features. It was #1 in the range test, even in the extreme condition. If there's one con to the Typhur Gold, the probes are a little bit on the thicker side still, and that minimum insertion's quite deep. Other than that, I really didn't have too many bad things to say about the Typhur. So with that being said, what's my top 3? Now, in no particular order, I don't want to label things, but Typhur. I think you guys can guess it, but the Typhur Gold is definitely my pick for the all-in-one package. And in my opinion, Typhur has completely replaced Meter. If you're looking for a standalone unit, all-in-one package, great app, great range, almost indestructible range, then the Typhur Gold's for you. And this is probably going to be the system that I'm going to recommend to most people that are looking for just a no BS solution. This is it. The next one for me is Combustion Inc. Gen 2. Combustion Inc. would be my recommendation for the nerds out there. People are looking for something that's scientific, but can also be used in everyday cooking. And last but not least, the Chef IQ. I think the Chef IQ is probably the best budget buy and probably the best entry-level thermometer system. I think a lot of folks are going to like that it kind of spoon feeds you things along the way, right? And tries to help you get you started in your cook. So these are my top 3. That's it for me, guys. I hope you found this video informative, and if you did, please consider subscribing and joining our channel memberships. I'll catch you on the next video.